Welcome to the Generation Kids Daily Devo podcast, where we move from wonder to worship, looking for God at work in the world around us, ready to ask the tough questions and discover what His Word has to say to us. Today's episode is titled Wonder and White Tigers, and it comes from me, Casey Taylor. If you've been following along this week, you know that we've been talking about the first of our 4 W's, wonder. But why did we choose to start there? And why is wonder so important? When we decide to ask a question or to ponder the things that we don't yet know or understand, what we're doing is opening ourselves up to a world of discovery and endless opportunities to learn. And learning is so important for us because there is so much to know. So much around us is happening, and mostly we just accept that it's happening without ever really thinking much about why or the cause of certain things. When we're young, curiosity is such an important thing to have.
Okay.
But it might be more important when you're older.
Okay.
You see, as you grow up, you start to learn the ways of the world. You learn what to expect from the people around you, or you learn what you can't expect from them. But overall, you begin to put together patterns of behavior, or you learn facts about life that help you on your journey to make sense of the world. But the one thing that none of us can overcome is uncertainty. We can never conquer it. We can try so hard to protect ourselves from all that we don't know or can't see. But even in that statement, don't we kind of discover that, we can't see everything, and we can't know everything, so we can't see or know what we even need protection from? When you spend enough time in the sun, you come to learn that you probably need sunscreen so your skin doesn't burn. But what you weren't expecting was that while you're putting on your lotion, a bird would fly by and poo on your shoulder. Now you were looking ahead. You were looking out for your skin. You didn't even know that you needed to look out for bird bombs from above. Life is full of uncertainty, and that means we do our best to learn what we can and also learn to expect the unexpected. But what do we do with that feeling of anxiety that we might carry, that we can't control or protect ourselves from everything? Well, King David in Psalm 34 gives us a good idea of what might work for us, just as it worked for him.
I sought the Lord, and He answered me, and delivered me from all my fears. Those who trust in Him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. Psalm 34, 4-5.
David, in the midst of his uncertainty, sought the Lord, and the Lord, the God of the universe, answered him and delivered him from all of his fears. Wow. Now, if you read this too quickly and just take it at face value, you might draw the wrong conclusion about what David is saying. He's saying that God delivered him from his fears, which doesn't exactly mean He took away all that David was afraid of, only that God didn't let his fear win.
Yeah.
David had been anointed by Samuel to eventually be the king of Israel when he was young. And at this point, that hadn't happened yet. But David also knew that his life was in very real danger, and that the current king, Saul, was looking for him in order to have David killed. And yes, while David was protected from death, in this instance, the deliverance from David's fear came not from his avoiding death, but from his trust in the presence and the promise of God. He knew what God had told him. He was to be king, and he was not yet king. And so if he believed what God said, he had to believe God would protect him to fulfill His promise of future kingship. His belief in the promises of God took away the doubt and fear from the present dangers to his life. He knew that God's plan would win in the end. My middle child and youngest son loves animals. He always has. And when he was around 2, we used to go to the Fort Worth Zoo at least once a week. And my son's favorite place to end up was the white tigers enclosure. But the wild thing about it was, it seemed like the white tiger's favorite place for him to be was also near their enclosure. He used to walk up to the seemingly bulletproof glass and wave to the tigers.
Hello.
And for whatever reason, he must have looked like the most tasty meal to those tigers. The most tasty thing they'd ever seen, because without fail, every time he'd show up, they would pace back and forth and randomly attack the glass, ready to make a quick meal of my son. Just scratch after scratch after scratch, trying to claw through the glass, trying to will their heads through the clear, thick protective barrier with their mouths wide open, ready for a snack. And what did he do while all of this was happening? He laughed. He clapped. In fact, he had the time of his life as these tigers daydreamed about how tasty he would be. And my son's face, it was radiant, because he trusted in the glass. He trusted in the protection it provided. He knew that no matter what those tigers tried, he was safe. And that's what it's like to know God and to trust in his promises. We can face the unknown in light of what we do know. Because in the end, the Bible tells us that God wins over evil forever, and that if we give our lives to Jesus and ask for his forgiveness and accept his salvation as a free gift, we win with him. When we look to him for confidence and not in what we know or understand, our faces begin to shine radiantly with a confidence that is based on who God is and what he promises to do. And then we can face the day's uncertainties by seeking the Lord, knowing that no matter what his answers to our prayers are, we can have the shine of ultimate victory on our faces, because it's what God said he has in store for us into eternity. So stay curious and embrace wonder, for because we know how it all ends, we can embrace the journey into the unknown, because we know he's got us. So let your light shine, my friends. Now it's time for
Today's Big Question!
Today's big question is, what are you anxious about or even afraid of? I bet one of God's promises could offer you some encouragement. And don't forget, you can always ask older believers in Jesus what they've learned about God's promises in your situation. We know God's got you, but you're never alone. In fact, we'd love to hear from you. Visit us on Instagram at WeAreGenerationKids. And we'll see you next week when we start on the second of our 4 W's, wisdom. Thanks for listening to the Generation Kids Daily Devo podcast. If you want to keep in touch with us on all our social media platforms, check out the links in the description. And if you'd like to help support us as we continue to create meaningful content for kids of all generations, please subscribe to our Patreon by visiting us at patreon.com/wearegenerationkids.